Alright, it's time for the intro skit. You know how it goes.
Oh, hello, Shane. Did you get a new haircut?
Did you become a fucking lard ass?
Wow, that was really rude and quite frankly uncalled for.
Listen to me, it's almost October. You know what that means.
Well, are we finally gonna do ghost tricks or vampires maybe?
Ice barrier.
What?
No back talk, you've got a job to do.
I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble discerning what ice barriers have to do with anything.
No back talk, or you get the rod. Off you go.
I would rather not get the rod. So yeah, today we're talking about ice barriers, and I guarantee that whatever you just thought of commenting is not nearly as funny as you think it is. You would think that a channel based on reviewing old archetypes would milk this cow as soon as possible, given that the quality of ice barriers, or the lack thereof, is a pretty prevalent consensus in the community, for some reason. I mean, naturally, no sane person is going to argue that ice barriers are a well-oiled machine, and some of their monsters do honestly make me wonder about the sobriety of the car design team, but over the years it seems to have become a meme to write off the entire archetype as garbage without looking into why exactly that's the case, or even comparing it to other archetypes of the time for the sake of making a relevant argument. So in the hopes of ending an obnoxiously long and misguided topic of discourse, and to immediately answer the question of, I imagine, the majority of the people watching the video, are ice barriers the worst archetype in the game? Jesus Christ, no! In fact, I can think of at least 11 verse runs on the top of my head. However, their abysmal reputation has to have come from some unique aspect of the archetype design, so let's break the ice and see what exactly is the core of the problem. We start off with the level 1, Blizz, Defender of the Ice Barrier. It's a water aqua monster with 300 attack and 500 defense, and when it's destroyed by a battle and sent to the graveyard, draw one card. It may not look like much, but let me tell you one thing. This guy right here sets up the basis for the majority of the archetype, meaning beautiful artwork paired up with effects that are mediocre at best, and meaningless pack filler trash on the level of OCG Volume 1 from 1999 at worst. Brain Damager Tikkun over here doesn't exactly do much to stand out as a quality piece of cardboard, especially considering the fact that an equally generic card with pretty much the same, if not better effect, was made 9 years before it. To rub the ice onto the wound, this guy was printed as secret rare, so the next time you're complaining about your favorite archetype not being shiny enough, just be glad they didn't waste the foil on the worst of their cards. The other level 1 is Caravan of the Ice Barrier, a water sea serpent with 500 attack and 200 defense, which once per turn lets you select 2 ice barrier monsters in your graveyard, return the selected monsters to the deck, and each player draws 1 card. Not exactly a Royal Firestorm Guards, is it? Recycling and drawing is always nice, but you're basically leaving a frail snail out on the field to get stomped over next turn, possibly by the card you let your opponent draw by activating its effect. Nice job! If you haven't caught on to the archetype's gameplay style so far, don't worry, it takes a while until it gets there. Secret Guards of the Ice Barrier is a level 2 aqua with 100 attack and 1600 defense, and it prevents face-up ice barrier monsters you control from being targeted by the effects of your opponent's effect monsters. Barring the false advertising, as this is clearly one guard as opposed to a plural, which the name implies, this is a very solid effect, which is sadly stacked on top of a monster with not much else going for it. The miserable attack value means you will usually rely on setting it face down and letting God do the rest of the work, and even then it's still ridiculously easy to run over. Its best feature is that it's a level 2 aqua, giving you access to, you know. Well, it's that time of the year again. The time for the cursed boy to make his appearance. Come on, get out. If you don't get out, there's no more back row for you to eat. Oh, PETA can't save you now. But in the level 2 heavy variants of ice barriers, there are better monsters to run. One of those monsters is PRIUR of the Ice Barrier. What happened to Later of the Ice Barrier? It has 1000 attack and 400 defense, and if you control a face-up ice barrier monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You cannot special summon any level 5 or higher monsters the turn you use this effect. You can tribute this card to target one ice barrier monster in your graveyard except PRIUR of the Ice Barrier, special summon that target. This is a card that was mediocre at best during the archetype's inception, mainly because its only usage was reviving high-level ice barrier monsters and going into synchros, that is, if it survives the turn due to its befuddling limitation. However, the card only became better over time since the Xyz era made it a rank 2 engine enabler, and now in the Link era, you need all the free monsters you can get. While the revival effect is the main focus of some ice barrier builds aiming to make as much usage of the archetype's playstyle, the turn limitation severely affects the strategy and usually takes a back seat, as mentioned before, to Xyz spamming. For the sake of swarming, PRIUR is usually recommended at 3. The next level 2 is the tuner DEWDARK of the Ice Barrier. Hey, it's a new flavor. He's got 1200 attack and 800 defense, and if the only face-up monsters you control are level 2 or lower monsters, this card can attack your opponent directly. Level 2 is usually a great one for a tuner, however DEWDARK is rarely used for synchro plays and a lot more for his effect and stat line. You see, one of the most popular Ice Barrier variants is the so-called Wetlands Beatdown. Using the Wetlands field spell, the attack of all your water aqua type level 2 or lower monsters, how specific, is increased by a fat 1200, effectively turning DEWDARK into a 2400 direct attacker. It can make for a synchro monster in a pinch, but this is usually not the tuner you would rely on for any kind of consistent synchro plays. Their last level 2 is GEOMANCER of the Ice Barrier, another tuner, this one with 1300 attack and 0 defense, and while you control another Ice Barrier monster, level 4 or higher monsters cannot declare an attack. GEOMANCER is another frequent choice in Wetlands Beatdown, especially considering the fact that it's pretty much a normal summonable 2500 attacker. Its effect used to be pretty decent back in the day as a sort of a gravity bind on legs, even though it's pretty much irrelevant nowadays, but with GEOMANCER we can finally start noticing a sort of a relevant gameplay theme for the archetype, that being the focus on locking down the opponent with various disabling effects when multiple Ice Barrier monsters are used in tandem, which is something that sounds cool in concept until you get acquainted with the archetype's complete inability to swarm the field with these kinds of monsters. As far as effects and stats go, GEOMANCER is serviceable for the time, but he falls under the common trappings of many old Ice Barrier monsters, which will become a lot more obvious very soon. Continuing on, we have their first level 3, which is also a tuner, Defender of the Ice Barrier. Wait, I thought Blizz was the Defender of the Ice Barrier. What, does the bird do the physical work while the fox defends the Ice Barrier from online cyberbullies? It's an aqua type for 200 attack and 1600 defense, and while you control another Ice Barrier monster, your opponent's monsters with attack equal to or higher than this card's defense cannot declare an attack. Again, decent effect for the time, but it's just more attack prevention in a way arguably inferior to GEOMANCER's. If anything, Defender is worth running due to being the last archetypal target for Surface, an incredibly helpful card which is basically a monster reborn for every monster so far except for Caravan, and due to being a level 3 tuner which the archetype greatly appreciates. So much like GEOMANCER, Defender is a card with an outdated effect, but holds up in terms of synergy with the other low-level Ice Barrier monsters. But now, completely stepping away from the aqua type teaming of the archetype so far, we have WARLOCK of the Ice Barrier, a level 3 spellcaster with 400 attack and 1000 defense, and while you control another face-up Ice Barrier monster, both players must set spell cards before activating them and cannot activate them until their next turn. A fun game to play when looking over Ice Barriers is remembering which floodgate each effect was based on, this very obviously being an anti-spell fragrance in monster form. Except now, instead of back row removal, it very easily dies to battle due to her tiny stats. Back during the Pendulum era, you could have made an argument that the card completely shuts down a huge number of Pendulum decks due to blocking off their scales, but honestly, if you're relying on controlling several Ice Barrier monsters just to slow down your opponent's spell cards, you might as well just run multiples of the aforementioned anti-spell fragrance. Next up is their other level 3 tuner, GEOMANCER of the Ice Barrier. It's another spellcaster, this one with 800 attack and 1200 defense, and the following effect. Discard one card and declare one attribute. This card cannot be selected as an attack target by monsters with that attribute. This effect can only be used once while this card is face up on the field. It's not good. It keeps up the prevalent Ice Barrier theme of mediocre battle protection while still being completely vulnerable to effects. It has a graveyard setup effect, but there are cards in the archetype that do the same thing for better payoff. And it's a tuner, but unlike Defender, it's not a target for Surface. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but this is the second worst GEOMANCER I've ever had to deal with in a game. Their last level 3 is Shock Troops of the Ice Barrier. It's a spellcaster with 1500 attack and 800 defense, and you can tribute this card to select one face-up water monster on the field, destroy it, and add one Ice Barrier monster from your deck to your hand. Yes, you heard that right. Not only does this guy need to tribute himself, but also destroy a water monster on the field, which in most cases I imagine it will have to be one of yours, just to perform the most basic search, in an archetype that has their own version of e-call. But to make things even more bizarre, these guys were an actual tech choice during Necros format, since you could pop a Necros monster summoned with Djinn Releaser, then search another copy of themselves to do it again if need be. Naturally, people quickly figured out this was a shithead idea, much like many other anti-Necros tech choices, but you know how they say, hell had no fury, like an extra deck scorned. Their first level 4 is Spellbreaker of the Ice Barrier. It's a spellcaster with 1200 attack and 2000 defense, and once per turn, you can send one Ice Barrier monster from your hand to the graveyard. If you do, spell cards cannot be activated until the end phase of your next turn, as long as this card remains face up on the field. It's arguably a vaguely better Warlock. It's certainly no Cold Wave, ironically considering the team, but it does the job. I mean, much like the rest of the archetype, it's almost completely useless nowadays, but I could see this being ran in in a few builds during the Pendulum era. Still though, this is not nearly the optimal graveyard setup Ice Barrier monster you'd wanna consider, but we'll get to that one soon enough. Sticking out like a frostbitten thumb during summertime is Numbing Grub in the Ice Barrier. It's an insect with 1300 attack and 1800 defense, and when it's normal summoned, you can block off a single unused main monster zone while this card is face up on the field. My friends, this is no Ice Barrier, it's an Ojama. Have you ever seen an Ojama? Sadly I have. It's even in the name. This thing is not even a member of the Ice Barrier troops, it's just in the Ice Barrier. He was just passing by but was mistaken as an ally due to his colors of a true Ice Barrier patriot. Funnily enough, the effect itself is a tad more relevant these days, but you're not gonna win a duel by blocking off a single solitary zone a Link monster points to. Let this guy go, he probably doesn't even wanna be here. Next in line is Pilgrim of the Ice Barrier. It's a warrior with 1500 attack and 1000 defense, and it cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster with 1900 or more attack. The clumsy battle protection team persists into Pilgrim, serving as sort of a power creeped obnoxious Celtic guard. Is this really what we needed? Not only did we already have several Ice Barrier monsters that prevent attacks, but they affected the entire field as opposed to this guy who prefers hogging all the protection for himself. If he had 1800 attack or defense, it would have been a decent card to play on your first turn back in the day and secure an Ice Barrier monster on the field, but he doesn't, so it's bad. Again breaking the mold for a short while, we have Sacred Spirit of the Ice Barrier. A zombie-type spirit monster with 1600 attack and 1200 defense, and much like the majority of spirit monsters, it cannot be special summoned, and it returns to the hand during the end phase of the turn it is normal summoned or flip face up. Unless you control another face up Ice Barrier monster, in which case the card's effect changes to select one monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand instead. This card only needed to be a different attribute to completely ditch any kind of thematic consistency it had with the rest of the archetype. Was there a purpose to making this a spirit monster other than gimmicks? Because it's lore? Wouldn't be the first time story took priority over a decent effect. What's even more baffling is that while bouncing was very much a relevant method of removal back in the day, this was just way too slow and clunky to pull off as opposed to just setting a compulsory. On all accounts, the card is just a confusing mess. On a completely different note, here's what's arguably one of the best Ice Barrier cards altogether, Strategist of the Ice Barrier. It's a level 4 spellcaster with 1600 attack and defense, and once per turn, you can send one Ice Barrier monster from your hand to the graveyard to draw one card. Simple, easy, has tolerable stats and a good level, offers draw power and graveyard setup, which is something Ice Barriers highly appreciate, mainly due to having a serious lack of effects unrelated to stunning the opponent in various underwhelming ways. This is a definite 3-off in most Ice Barrier builds. Following that, we have the next level 4, Dance Princess of the Ice Barrier. Yes, queens, slay. She's got 1700 attack and 900 defense, and once per turn, if you control another Ice Barrier monster, you can reveal any number of Ice Barrier monsters in your hand to return the same number of set, spell or trap cards your opponent controls to the hand. I mean, I've heard of worse back row removal, and this was certainly an effect that had relevance back in the day when people were actually running battle traps, but nowadays the back row you usually run into are either counter traps or archetypal continuous cards. Adding on to that, the activation condition is a bit too specific. Not only do you have to control several Ice Barrier monsters, but you also need to have a fair amount of them in your hand to entirely clean up a back row. It makes for a neat combo with Warlock, but it's not really worth actively attempting to pull off. It's not the worst Ice Barrier card, but its quality has severely degraded over time. The last level 4 is Samurai of the Ice Barrier. It's a warrior with 1800 attack and 1500 defense, and when this face-up attack position card is changed to face-up defense position, destroy this card, and if you do, draw one card. And to think we were on such a good track for draw power 2 cards ago. For that cost, I would at least expect it to draw 2 cards, especially considering that the archetype already has a way simpler, way more consistent draw 1 effect. I can kinda understand the battle position changing, but was it really worth screwing over the entire effect for the sake of Harakiri symbolism? This entire card is just kind of a shameful display! Yeah, that. But wait, it gets worse! Let us make room for the royalty of bad design, cause honestly this shit should be in a museum, that being Royal Knight of the Ice Barrier. A level 5 warrior with 2000 attack and defense, and when it's tribute summoned, special summon one Ice Coffin token, a level 1 water aqua type with 1000 attack and 0 defense, in attack position to your opponent's side of the field. This token cannot be tributed for a tribute summon. Okay, so this entire effect would have been perfectly acceptable if the card was level 4, but not only does this 2000 attack level 5 specifically ask to be tribute summoned to make a token, which is not optional by the way, this is your life now, but the card was made during the Synchro era, so if you didn't destroy that token during the turn you summoned it, you gave your opponent a free level for a Synchro. I would also say you gave them a free link material, but I'm gonna be level-headed and assume nobody has attempted to summon this in the last 5 years. The single solitary upside of this card is that in case your opponent has a monster you can't run over, you can summon Royal Knight and ram into the coffin for 1000 damage, but ironically you just put yourself into a coffin because you wasted resources on summoning Royal Knight of the fucking Ice Barrier! Next up is their first level 6, Daisojo of the Ice Barrier. It's a spellcaster with 1600 attack and 2200 defense, and when it's normal or flip summoned, it's changed to defense position. When this card is face up on the field, face up Ice Barrier monsters you control cannot be destroyed by effects of spell or trap cards. Well, if anything, his heart's in the right place, because the archetype could really use more protection besides battle, but given that we're long past the times of rampant Raigeki breaks, dark holes, torrential tributes, bottomless trap holes, mirror forces, etc, there is really no point in trying to make room for Daisojo. It used to be decent, but the times have caught up with him a while ago. The other level 6 is General Raiho of the Ice Barrier. He's a warrior with 2100 attack and 2300 defense, and when an effect resolves that was activated by an effect monster that was on your opponent's side of the field, they must choose to discard one card or the effect is negated. It's honestly a really neat idea, which worked fairly well for the time period, since you would often be matched up against decks that have to empty the shit out of their hand to make a monster with a decent effect, and it was pretty much an instant win against Infernity. Although I can't imagine the pain of the poor sod who played this against Dark Worlds. Sadly, much like the rest of the archetype, it's horribly outdated nowadays, because in most cases you will be helping an opponent by giving them free graveyard setup. First of their two level 7s is Medium of the Ice Barrier. That's a large medium. She's got 2200 attack and 1600 defense, and if the opponent controls 4 or more cards than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. Your opponent can only activate one spell or trap card each turn. So while it's nice that a high level Ice Barrier monster can special summon itself, what's worth talking about more is that this card was a topic of discussion for a short time during the middle of the Pendulum era as a splashable tech to prevent the opponent from setting up their scales, due to its level which made it summonable in decks that had access to generic 1-8 pendulums, and due to its inherent generic special summon condition. On the other hand, Great Shogun Shien was just as splashable with the same stun effect but higher stats, and while you couldn't special summon it the same way as Medium, the fact of the matter is that if your opponent already controls 4 or more cards than you do, it's a bit too late to be blocking scales. It's a solid idea, and Medium might have seen some play if Ice Barriers hadn't gotten their special moments stolen by a better archetype. Following up is the other level 7, this waterbender looking as General Gantala of the Ice Barrier. It's a warrior with 2700 attack and 2000 defense, and once per turn during your end phase, you can select one Ice Barrier monster in your graveyard except General Gantala and special summon it. This card is the sole excuse for the several discard costs the archetype had so far, but aside from taking until the end phase to apply the effect, Gantala is one of the best main deck Ice Barrier monsters. If you manage to summon him either by tribute or other ways, he can help with reviving your stun monsters you discarded with Strategist, or setting up your play for the next turn. The key part being next turn, since again the end phase effect is something you need to watch out for. While the card would be leagues better if you could apply during the main phase, it's one of the closest things the archetype has to a playmaker. The final main deck Ice Barrier monster is General Grunard, a level 8 warrior with 2800 attack and 1000 defense, which allows you to normal summon one Ice Barrier monster in addition to your normal summon or set during your main phase, of course only once per turn. Honestly, the best thing about this guy is the attack value. By the time he actually hits the field, you probably won't need any more normal summons of Ice Barrier monsters at that point, since you either emptied your hand or tributed a bunch of crap to summon him. Even though the guy is surrounded by swords, he does nothing to actually damage the opposition, so the main deck goes out with a whimper. But somehow, the Ice Barrier extra deck lineup is one of the most infamously powerful in the game, so let's kick it off with Duloren, Tiger King of the Ice Barrier. Excuse the picture quality, just pretend he wished to remain anonymous. It's a level 6 Synchro Beast-type monster with 2000 attack and 1400 defense, requires one tuner and one or more non-tuner water monsters, and once per turn you can return any number of face-up cards you control to the owner's hand. This card gains 500 attack for each card returned to the hand by this effect until the end of this turn. Alright, so let me get this out of the way real quick. This card doesn't do jack shit for Ice Barriers. They already struggle to put resources on the field, and bouncing them back for the sake of boosting a card's attack is not something they would necessarily wanna do. No, Duloren is good because it's a near generic self-bouncer, and as we all know, self-bouncing is a an absolutely cursed mechanic that rarely ever led to anything besides FTKs, which would be the reason DeLorean is limited, because pairing up 2 or more of these kitties led to some highly undesirable shenanigans. He's still very much a cog in the FTK machine. In fact, I don't think there's incentive to run him in anything else, but it's a nice relic of the times when the power of returning things to your own hand was severely underestimated. Much like the next card, Brionac, fuck it, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. It's not actually Dragon type, but Sea Serpent of the Ice Barrier did not sound threatening enough. It's another level 6 synchro, requires 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters, and it allows you to discard any number of cards to the graveyard, then target the same number of cards on the field, return those cards to the hand. Or it would before the Rata came by and made the effect a card once per turn and only enabled you to bounce your opponent's cards. So yeah, Brionac used to be a completely generic non-once per turn discard anything, bounce anything, and even though the effect enabled a horrid amount of loops, mainly involving future fusion, it took the banlist department a good 4 years to deem it broken enough to be forbidden, which we can thank Merlantians for. The fact that it was completely generic meant that other faster archetypes took advantage of the card, while Ice Barriers themselves had to jump through hoops to bring it out consistently. As for its usage in the archetype, I mean, it helps out about as much as it does any other slow synchro archetype from the time. Nothing about its design is really intended for high-level Ice Barrier synergy. Still though, even with the nerf, Brionac stood the test of time, so if you have space for a level 6 synchro and you don't plan on Quasar spamming, it's always a good choice. Slightly less infamous Ice Barrier Dragon is Gungnir. The level 7 with 2500 attack and 1700 defense requires 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner water monsters, and once per turn, you can discard up to 2 cards to the graveyard to target the same number of cards your opponent controls, destroy them. Basically a less generic, arguably less useful Brionac, but still with a decently formidable effect. Again, not a monster the archetype actively struggles to summon. Honestly, I've seen this thing summoning Gradles more often than Ice Barriers, and the discard requirement can be costly sometimes, but it's still a powerful addition to the arsenal, so there's really no reason to ignore it. But fuck that, I know why you're all here, to see Yu-Gi-Oh's equivalent of a WMD. Give it up for the synchro legend Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. A level 9 with 2700 attack and 2000 defense requires 1 tuner and 2 or more non-tuner monsters, and when it's synchro summoned, you can banish up to 1 card each from your opponent's hand, field, and graveyard, the card in the hand being chosen at random. Limited since 2010, forbidden in the TCG for 5 years, Trishula has certainly had a rough time serving her nickel, but for a good reason. I don't think I need to go into detail about why Trishula is one of the best synchros, if not the best monsters in the game period, but some of the reasons would certainly involve her fairly generic summoning condition, 2 non-tuners notwithstanding, a ridiculous effect which is unpreventable once it goes off, unlike her Necros counterpart, and multiples of Trishula used to be a very real threat, hence her limited position on the ban list. Once again, Ice Barriers get screwed out of their best monster in the most brutal card game equivalent of NTR ever since Grand Mall became a free public use Gamecil. Run it in your Ice Barrier build if you're able to summon it, there's really not much to lose, but don't expect it to hit the field very often. The first Ice Barrier spell is Medallion of the Ice Barrier. Add 1 Ice Barrier monster from your deck to your hand. It's as simple as it gets, my dudes, what do I even say about this one? I can list about 20 archetypes right now that would kill to have a card like this, but apparently Konami thought Ice Barriers of all things deserved one more than anything else, so enjoy this short victory while it lasts.
Starving Arcana forces in Africa could have eaten that medallion.
Needless to say, run 3 at all times. The next spell is Magic Triangle of the Ice Barrier. Reveal 3 Ice Barrier monsters with different names in your hand to select 1 card your opponent controls, destroy that card and special summon 1 Ice Barrier monster from your hand. Well, that's new, an Ice Barrier card that makes them plus without having to go minus double. This is the primary way you'll be summoning stuff like General Gantala, maybe even using it specifically for removal in a pinch. It's just a problem that its usefulness depends on your Ice Barrier ratios and your deck's consistency. While it's a good effect, the activation condition can be a severe pain in the ass, so depending on the number of differently named Ice Barrier monsters you're running, consider putting in a single Magic Triangle. 2 if you're feeling dangerous. The final Ice Barrier card is Mirror of the Ice Barrier, a quick play. During this turn, each time a card is banished from your hand, your side of the field, and or your graveyard by the effect of an opponent's effect monster, if a card in your hand is banished, banish up to 2 random cards in your opponent's hand, if a card you control is banished, banish up to 2 cards your opponent controls, and if a card in your graveyard is banished, banish up to 2 cards in your opponent's graveyard. If banished, then banish, and banish this, banish that. Why does an archetype whose boss monster is Trishula have a card that counters Trishula anyway? I mean, I guess it's a funky tech during formats where there's a lot of banishing going on, but I don't recall anybody throwing this against my ABC. No, because people are not stupid and they would rather negate an effect as opposed to letting it go through with a slight payback. It's really not worth discussing much. Let's hand out some grades, shall we? I wouldn't give a heck about the consistency scale if it wasn't for Medallion, but any archetype that has a free unlimited searcher is at least tolerable in my opinion. Their power output, on the other hand, is limited almost exclusively to their synchro monsters, which are strong but they don't hit the field nearly often enough to matter. The comeback ability is limited to Gantala and Triangle, two cards that require already existing setup. As for the protection, I was honest to god considering giving them some credit here due to their insistence on battle protection, but that's mostly what it is. Very specific battle protection and extremely underwhelming effect protection. However, I did decide to cut them some slack in the versatility department, mainly due to the sheer scope of crap they're able to do, as unreliable as it may be, and besides, their synchros are extremely splashable. Here's a janky but link-ready decklist featuring the dandy new Mastar Boy, feel free to add a Trishula at will. A phrase that comes to mind when discussing ice barriers is less than the sum of their parts. They have a team but barely any synergy. They have amazing synchros but they struggle to summon them. They have various disabling options but they focus on working in tandem, which the archetype has problems setting up. Again, there are dual terminal archetypes far worse than ice barriers, lacking a concrete goal or team, and while these guys do have an iceberg's worth of issues, their sheer versatility allows for a decent amount of variety in deck building. So stop making fun of them. All this archetype reviewing makes a man hungry. Looks like Shape's party is over. Might as well run to the kitchen. Oh yes!
The party got a bit heated, so I thought I'd cool off. You get me, mate? You get it? Cool off.
Thank you everyone for watching this episode of Archetype Archive. Do support my Patreon if you want to keep the channel going, and if you pledge a decent amount you might just be able to request the next archetype to be reviewed. Do remember to subscribe, and as always, I'll see you next time.